Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. On this episode, I'm joined by my good mate, Lievin Ndimanyi. He and I used to run a podcast together where we spoke more broadly about the NBA. So we're going to be doing that every now and again now on this podcast. Next couple of weeks, we're going to be looking at the East and the Western Conference and do our way too early power rankings of all 30 teams. This episode is going to start with the Eastern Conference. So if you want to tune into more Warrior chat, maybe go check out some of my more recent podcasts because this will be focusing mainly on the Eastern Conference, as I said. Enjoy the episode. How are we, Lee? Welcome to the episode. A bit of a nightmare, or nearly nightmare, 24 hours for us. Your Dons just got the job done. Nearly an absolute bloody nightmare against the Eagles. Get up by a point, and then my Pies. That was the definition of a nightmare, losing to the Hawks by 5 goals. I was actually thinking about this and putting it into kind of NBA context, and if you guys had lost to the Eagles of this season, they're probably going to finish with 2 wins out of 23 games. That's worse. Like if you extrapolate it out across the course of an NBA season, that's worse than the 2015-16 76ers that went 10-72. So just to put it into some context of who you nearly lost to, you won by a point. And I mean, for my Pies, like 2 weeks ago, we looked like the 73-9 Warriors from that 15-16 season. Couple of blips on the radar in the last 2 weeks, and losing to Hawthorn is basically like losing to the Hornets of last season, like just a mid-20s win team, just pretty trash. So that's definitely not ideal, but how have you been anyway?
Well, it's the drama of the AFL season is actually going to be very interesting. Obviously, things have slowed right down with the NBA in the off season. So the drama of the AFL, the run home, obviously the devastating news for you that Dacos is going to be out for 6 weeks. I think that's I think if everything goes well, he's only out for 6 weeks. So the drama doesn't stop for us fans of the AFL and NBA, but there's always something going on that we can talk about. I'm pretty excited to jump in, talk power rankings. Way too early, power rankings. Obviously, the NBA off season is never done. Truthfully, there's always something happening on in the background. So very keen to hear your thoughts after the moves that have been done. Starting right at the bottom, who did you have as the team that is probably going to get the number 1 pick next year? Didn't impress you at all? Will be at the bottom of the Eastern Conference come end of next season.
Yeah. So we'll do this from 15 down to 1. This is kind of my power rankings rather than what I think the regular season records will be. So I guess it's the chances of winning the championship next season. However, obviously, if you're out of the playoff picture, I'm kind of evaluating you on regular season record. The Detroit Pistons were 10 games below the Charlotte Hornets last season. So the Hornets were 14th, the Pistons were 15th. That's kind of gone under the radar how far last they were in the Eastern Conference. Like, it wasn't particularly close. They won 17, the Hornets won 27. And so I don't think there's any real way that they can make enough of a jump here to actually get out of that 15th spot in the Eastern Conference. They will obviously get Cade Cunningham back. Apparently, by all reports, he's been looking really good in this kind of USA training camp before the World Cup that they're doing. A lot of people saying that he's been the best player on the floor over their training runs so far. So they will get him back, hopefully, for a full season. He's obviously going to make a significant difference as the best player on the team. But I can also see them making some moves as well. Like, I'm still not particularly sure what Bojan Bogdanovic is doing on the team. I'm expecting him to get moved by the February trade deadline. And if not before the start of the season, to be totally honest as well. I know they obviously re-signed him last season, but that was more, him securing his money, and it's a pretty tradable contract there at around $20 million a season, so I can see a move being made there. Did you have the Pistons as well, or anyone else?
I had the Wizards actually last, but I do want to touch on the Pistons there and what you just said about Cade. Actually, it's only Twitter videos I've been seeing, mind you, of the USA, and how many times we've been misled by an off-season video. But Cade Cunningham, 6'8". He's got NBA experience under him, first of all, and everything that I'm reading and seeing so far is fantastic. There's a lot of talent at those USA camps, so if he's been the best player there, I think that says something. Beef Stew got his extension there. Asar Thompson, I think just the tools alone that make him very, very exciting. The lack of spacing really frightens me for players that are downhill. Jaden Ivey is a downhill guy. Jalen Duran, even though he's shown a lot of flashes in the off-season, and even at the USA camp, I've seen some things, but all of those players need a lot of floor spacing. Why I didn't have them completely last is the Monty Williams signing. I think he, in the offseason, Monty Williams, although he's never got over the top, he's had success wherever he's gone. Young team, a lot of talent to work with, and what you just said about the moves. I mean, Bogdanovic, very tradable contract on that front there, and you can imagine these players get more confident, and you can start figuring out who's actually going to be part of your future. But it was the Washington Wizards I had last for many reasons. The only positive thing I'll say about the Washington Wizards, though, is the fact that you got some sort of value out of the Bradley Beal contract. We talked at length about how bad of a contract that was, and I don't think that we'll ever see a no trade clause again for anyone that's not the best player in the NBA. The fact that I can point and see, all right, Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma. Sorry, Jordan Poole is the guy that you sort of got back in that, and you're going to have Kyle Kuzma obviously being somebody that's he's going to put up big numbers. You probably lose, but I think it's the fact they have to lose. I read somewhere that they've only got one draft pick next year in the 24 draft. If that's outside the top 12, that goes to the Knicks. So they don't have a choice but to lose, because in terms of asset management, there is no worse franchise in probably most sports, to be honest, with the way the last 5-6 years they've had there. So I see them being squad on heavily. I see Jordan Poole and Kuzma putting up huge numbers, but empty numbers at that. And I think this upcoming draft is already rated one of the worst in recent history too. So I think it's very bleak just across the board for there. I'd imagine Wizards were your second lowest team in these rankings.
Yeah, I had them 14th. I do think that they're I would much prefer to be Detroit moving forward. There's little doubt about that. But I actually think the Wizards have a little more experience with their younger guys and what the Pistons do. So if you look at the Pistons' main guys, Cade is technically coming into his third season, but he missed all of last year, so really it's his second season. Same with Jaden Ivey. Thompson, obviously, in his rookie season is going to be playing a major role. As if you look at the Wizards, Poole coming into his fifth season now, and I just thought the combination of him and Kuzma offensively, I think they'll just have some nights. I think Jordan Poole might just have some nights where he goes for 35 and wins your game. And then, Kuzma can have his nights where he scores 25 or 30. And I just think they're more likely to upset some teams with that duo as kind of an offensive arsenal, as opposed to the more inexperienced Pistons team. Even if you look at the younger Wizards guys, Denny Avdia, Corey Kispert, these guys, they're third, fourth year players rather than first, second year players like Detroit have. So make no mistake about it, I'd much rather be the Detroit Pistons as a franchise moving forward, and I'd much prefer their younger talent. But I just think the Wizards are going to be more capable of winning a few. We're talking about pretty bad teams here. There might be a 2 or 3 game difference between them at the end of the regular season. I do think Bilal Coulibaly, the early lottery pick for the Wizards as well, he looked really good defensively in Summer League, and I actually do think he could have some kind of defensive impact for them, for the Wizards heading into next season. Anything else on the Pistons or the Wizards, or do we want to go to 13th?
We'll jump to 13. I think you can interchange both those teams.
Yeah,
Probably
I agree. Yeah. I do want to say as well, that whole Pistons chat, we didn't talk about James Wiseman, which is a very disappointing for me as a former Warriors fan. I wrote an article about it a few weeks ago about how James Wiseman, he was supposed to, move away from the Warriors and get greater opportunity. But if you have a look at that Detroit front court, I don't know what the hell is going on, because you've got Beef Stew, you've got Jalen Duran, you've got Wiseman, and you've got Marvin Bagley III still there as well. And so that's 4. Now, you can make the argument that maybe a couple of them can play power forward, but to me, all 4 of those guys are centers primarily, and you're not going to have too much success, I don't think, if you're running double big lineups with those 4 guys, because 1, I think primarily they're all centers, and 2, they're not hugely talented players like an Evan Mobley is in Cleveland, for example, where you can get away with playing with the 4 next to Jared Allen. But we'll talk about that soon, I guess, with the Cavs. Anyway, we'll move on from the Pistons and Wizards. A little bit of an interesting one here, and for me, the Toronto Raptors. I
Mm.
I do not like this team whatsoever. They don't
Oh,
have a point guard for starters, Dennis the Menace. Now maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you give the ball to Siakam and Scotty Barnes more and let them run the offense a little bit more, which they've been doing plenty in the last couple of seasons anyway. You re-sign Jakob Poeltl. Like, it's a nice, solid team. I just think that there is a good chance that they blow it up at some point. Surely you learned from the whole Fred VanVleet experience where you have VanVleet, you could have traded him to the Lakers or someone else at some point in the last 12 months of his contract, and then he gets up and leaves and goes to Houston. OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam, I think both can be free agents at the end of next season. I know Anunoby certainly can opt out of his player option and become a free agent. Like, he's the big one. Now, I'm not saying he's a hugely difference-making player, although a lot of teams are going to want him. And I can't see how they let OG Anunoby get to a point where he becomes a free agent and can just walk. I don't see that. So you've either got to they're both eligible for extensions. Although I think there's a maximum on what I think Anunoby can make something like 4 year, $115 million extension, which I think he might want to opt out and try and get more than that. Who knows? We'll wait and see. There's definitely a limit on how much they can offer him in an extension. I think they've got to learn from the VanVleet mistake, and I think everyone is clamoring for this team to blow it up, to get rid of Siakam, to get rid of OG Anunoby, to build around Scotty Barnes, and by doing that, obviously moving back a little bit, having a couple of years where they try and acquire top 5 picks and then reset and go from there.
well, I only had them one spot above you, but I also am very skeptical about the Raptors and what they've done these past couple of years because I've applauded them. Well, the team that I would put around Kawhi Leonard in such a short amount of space, their front office and the people they've been able to find out of nowhere, even Gary Trent Jr. being a dead-eye shooter and Fred VanVleet out of nowhere, I've had such huge respect for their front office. So for them to be stalling, treading water, whatever you want to call it, in because I remember seeing somewhere that OG, whether they put the report out, but OG was a massive trade piece around the league, and I reckon teams would throw multiple first round picks for a guy his size on there. So I'm very much of the same mindset. The drop. Fred VanVleet's not. Obviously, he had a bit of a down year, but Schroeder is so much worse, and you're going to see a massive drop. The spacing goes and playmaking goes because he made so many brain dead decisions for the Lakers, and if you're going to give him the ball 90% of the time, it's going to be as pretty as you think. I mean, they fired Nick Nurse and Darko, I can't pronounce his surname, the coach they got, but he's worked at teams that like OKC and Memphis who've had huge excitement and improvement from their young players. So maybe maybe they did need that change because I'm still adamant that Scotty Barnes is going to be a superstar in today's NBA. So maybe this is the year that they do blow it up because I can see plenty of value for Pascal, plenty of value for OG if you decide to just give the keys to Scotty. But the asset management is what's making me. That's probably why I have them so low because I would have trusted them years gone by to make incredible moves, keep unearthing this incredible talent through their draft. But the fact that they won't pull the trigger, and if they're getting back 80 cents on the dollar for some of these players, I think it's something deeper than just their talent level. It's actually their management that needs a big overhaul. So I only had them at one spot above you, but the team I had them under there was the Charlotte Hornets. And their offseason, they signed Frank Nicolino about 24 hours ago. LaMelo Ball obviously got the huge extension, reacquired, I guess, Miles Bridges, who's going to be playing this year, and Brandon Miller, obviously the number 2 pick. There's still not enough. I just don't trust Charlotte Hornets and their coaching or anything. And obviously they're moving out of Michael Jordan's, I guess, shadow. Now he sold the team, and I don't know, maybe they start making moves around management and the coach there. But Gordon Hayward, Scary Terry, they can't stay healthy for long enough. I feel like I'll end up seeing the same movie anyway. Gordon Hayward will play just 50% of the games if all goes well. You start seeing some improvement, but then the drop off. There's still not enough talent around LaMelo Ball on there. I can't expect a massive change and leap in such a short amount of space for a team that is Charlotte. So I'd imagine you probably have them next in terms of rankings there.
Yeah, I had them 12th. Just back to the Raptors for a second though. So I'm assuming their starting 5 might be Dennis Schroeder, OG, Scotty, Pascal, Poeltl.
Yeah.
maybe they don't have a point guard and they start Gary Trent Jr. and just give the ball to Scotty and Pascal. Especially if they go the first option, that is one of the worst spacing lineups that's the worst spacing lineup in the NBA. Pirtle can't shoot from beyond the restricted area, basically. Siakam's 3-point shot kind of comes and goes. It's okay, but it's certainly not his major attribute. Scotty is a clear weakness in his perimeter shot. And then OG, again, solid. He's not like a complete spot up guy, though, that's for sure. And then Dennis is certainly. I want to give our man Dennis some credit. I thought the way he guarded Steph Curry in the second round of the playoffs, he actually made him work. I thought he was decent at times for the Lakers, and like he must have been because he got 13 million, which I think is a bit overs, but still, I don't think it's outrageously overs. So I want to give him credit there, but he's also not a starting caliber point guard in this league, and to have him replace Fred VanVleet is a big downgrade. As much as you say VanVleet was up and down a little bit last season, particularly with his shooting. Anyway, onto the Hornets. I don't like Miles Bridges. I'd rather him not be playing at all. Is he a good NBA player though? Yes. Does he make Charlotte at least 5 wins better next season? Yes, probably. He's a good player. Like before the whole shit show happened with him, like he was. Remember that the news of his domestic violence came out like 24, 48 hours before free agency, last season, like 12 months ago, and we were talking about Miles Bridges getting like 4-year 120, like getting $30 million a season, and that wasn't outrageous. That was what we were expecting, and so it was like the biggest fumble of the bag ever. But if he comes back and he's close to a $30 million player, like he's a good player, as much as you might want to hate on him for what he's done off the court, he's a good basketball player. And so you add him back into the mix. And look, Brandon Miller, I'm not saying he's going to be impacting winning in his rookie season. In fact, he might go the opposite. He's probably going to have nights where he shoots 2 for 12 and loses you the game. However, he's a talent, right? He's a talented young player. And so I do think that there actually is a pathway here where Charlotte can build around LaMelo because, like LaMelo, I didn't actually write this down, but how many games did he miss last year? Quite a lot. Quite a few. So anyway, this was a 27-win team last season, finished 14th. I just think if LaMelo plays a full season and Miles Bridges is anywhere close to the player we saw in his 4th year, then I legitimately think they're at least 7 or 8 win better team, which gets them up to like 35 wins, which probably gets them out of the bottom 3 in the conference. And
he played 36 games.
So he played 36 games. So he's missed 46. Like if he plays at least 60, 65 games, which is pretty like you'd think he'd play more than that. I just don't see how this team. I like the overs. Now, I don't know. I haven't checked what their over-under line is. Wins next season. I don't mind there because I'm assuming it's going to be maybe about 30, 32 and a half. Let me look this up while we're talking about Charlotte because I legitimately think they're a decent bet for the overs. Like if they finish 10th and are in the play-in tournament next season, I'm not going to be completely shocked.
Well, just on paper, lineup, you go LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller at the 2, just because of his versatility, I guess. Bridges 3, PJ Washington 4, and then.
Well, he's still a restricted free agent. Like, what the hell's going on there?
He doesn't sign, and then Mark Miller's at 5. I mean, on paper, that's a lot of length, athleticism, and I guess at least excitement. And yeah, those stats you said, Miles Bridges, I swear he was almost the all-star level that year. And so I don't see why they can't make that jump.
Yeah, so they're 30 and a half wins. I think that's a lock. You just by virtue, you add in what we thought was a $30 million player, and you've got your $200+ million player coming back after playing only 36 games last season, and you're asking me whether they're going to win 4 extra games. That's a lock. I'm telling you. Anyway, We'll move on from the Charlotte Hornets. We're up to 10 here. No, 15, 14, 13. No, we're up to 11, sorry. Who have you got at 11?
I've got the Bulls purely just out of disappointment to do absolutely nothing after the season they had. I think is incredibly disappointing for a team who I think could be better if they tweak some things. Lonzo Ball. It looks like his career might be over, which is devastating news. He was so exciting in those early years. If you go back and watch those, just college highlights alone, what he could do for a team. And I think he, on this team, with the athleticism they have, he could have been such a weapon. You can see the work he put in as well, the strength, the shooting. And so it's actually just devastating to actually hear that he's going to be likely out for this next season. The signings with Javon Carter, they re-signed Kobe White and Vooch. They re-signed, which I don't understand really their direction on that. And I think Lievin trade demand is imminent, to be honest, with this, because I see them under not being, in fact, not even beating the teams around them, which is going to really annoy. He's not obviously not going to compete with the Bucks and so on, but when he starts losing to the teams that are under him, I think that's where it's really getting annoying, because Lievin is such a talent, and I know teams are clamoring for him. So to not make a single move, to not have a stability at the point guard position, which is such a big, and I can't really point to a style of theirs or something that kind of makes them stand out. Because when we start going, we're going to obviously go to the better and better teams, but at least they have a point of difference or something that I can point to. But in terms of the like asset managers, so re-signing Vooch, even if I feel like you should have traded him on there, because him at the 5 defensively is just not working. And to me, Lievin, that is a ticking time bomb. So I think teams will start looking at I reckon they'll start pretty badly too. But teams will then start picking up the phone. So the Bulls, I haven't liked anything these past couple of years. Where do you have the Bulls first of all, and do you concur with those thoughts?
I've actually got a bit higher than that. I was going through some of these teams, and I don't like really any of them. So I had the Bulls 8th, which, like, they're such a meh team. Like, I don't like them at all. Their 8th is probably the best they can do, I think, but they could be anywhere between 8 and 12, in my opinion. I think bringing Vooch back was a classic. Well, we gave up Wendell Carter Jr., Franz Wagner, and Jed Howard in the end for him. An absolute horrifically bad trade. So we can't just let him walk for nothing. We've got to just keep him around at least. So they've really got no direction still. DeRozan's the interesting one for me because he's extension eligible. Can be a free agent, I think, at the end of next season. Like, what do you do with him? Do you try and trade him? What team wants him on $27, $28 million? That's like a bit odd. Zach LaVine, look, he's a talented player. And again, it comes back to, again, why I had the Wizards over the Pistons here is because I do think that trio of LaVine and DeRozan and Vucevic, you add the defensive versatility of Caruso if you can get a full season out of him. I do think that this team does have the talent to be able to beat enough teams to be better than a few of these other teams that I've got further down the list in the Eastern Conference. That's not to say that I like them at all. It's not to say that they are going to be any kind of like threat come the playoffs. But if they were to sneak in there as the 8th seed, I'm not going to be overly surprised because I just don't like many of these teams. Like I had the Pacers at 11. Tyrese Halliburton is absolutely fantastic. I'm just wondering who's next for that team. Mathurin burst out of the blocks last season, but then was kind of quiet, a little bit inefficient towards the end of the season. You've got Miles Turner there. You've traded for Obi Toppin, which I like, but I'm just not. I don't know because we just haven't seen him with the opportunity in New York. So, do we think he's going to come out and be like a starting caliber player all of a sudden in Indiana? It's just too much of a question mark there for me. Where'd you have the Pacers here? Were they 10th for you?
They were 10th for me, and I'm actually quite optimistic about the Pacers because Tyrese, I'm adamant that every championship team has to have stability, like a floor general, essentially. And the leap that he made last year, he's so exciting. Players like Obi are going to thrive with a guy like him. Pass first. And Obi, he lives above the rim, but he showed some flashes with catch and shoot. on there. So I know the lineup on paper. I like Bruce Brown mostly for the contract because it's very team friendly. When you first look at the 46 million, you're like, oh my god, but team option. So it's 2 years, sorry, and then a team option. So I
Yeah.
kind of like him as that kind of that Swiss Army knife, a bit more stability, a bit stronger around the perimeter. You can probably throw him on the other team's best perimeter scorer. I've seen some playmaking. Bruce Brown just fits into every team that he's played for so far. So I expect that to go really well. And yeah, just Tyrese as a team lifter. I love what he can do for an NBA team, and a guy like him is going to have a long career because of what he can do for a team. All the small things on there. So I still, again, firepower. That's probably why I don't have them any higher than 10th, truthfully. I feel like, Buddy Hield, Miles Turner can score there, but I would like that star on the perimeter who can just go and give me 25. And I think until they get that guy, probably not going to go any higher than this.
Yeah, I am interested to see how Bruce Brown goes because he started in Detroit, but most notably, I guess, he's been at Brooklyn and then with Denver, two teams that were in championship contention. Like he was playing with Brooklyn with that KD, Harden, Kyrie, that kind of trio, and then obviously goes to Denver, and he's really still the the fifth, sixth player, I guess, on that team. Like you can put him and maybe KCP on the same rung below Jokic and Murray and Porter Jr. So and Gordon as well. So him and KCP kind of fifth, sixth guy, depending on how you'd like to split them. Now he goes to he gets his money and he goes to still a rebuilding team and a team who, if everything goes right, maybe they get an eighth seed, but they're still more likely to be in that playing mix around 9 to 12 kind of thing. And I'm just interested to see how he. I do agree with you that he should fit well. I'm just not overly convinced because is he a guy that should be a high volume ball handler or a high volume shooter? No, that's not his game for me. So I'm just interested to see if that does happen, if we see an absolute wealth of increase in Bruce Brown handling the ball at the perimeter or taking catch and shoot threes, taking shots off the dribble, whatever that is. I'm not actually sure that's overly great for winning basketball, which is, I guess, a factor here in why I still have the Pacers at 11th. The Nets for me, I had 10th. Like as exciting as Mikal Bridges was towards the end of the last season, and like they still stumbled into the playoffs. They had clearly had a losing record after the KD and Kyrie trades, and if you've got a losing record, then I can't really have you higher than eighth. And I actually just prefer, again, would I rather be Brooklyn or Chicago? Probably Brooklyn. But I do just think that there's a bit more depth in Chicago than there is in Brooklyn. And I'm not, as much as I love what Bridges did, I'd like to see it across the course of a whole season. And I'm still not overly convinced he's a net past the February trade deadline. I know they're saying everything publicly in terms of, we want him around long term. He's our future. They've just re-signed Cam Johnson on a 4-year deal as well. You don't know what a desperate team might offer come the trade deadline where Brooklyn actually say to themselves, yeah, look, we like Mikal, but is he the guy on a championship winning team? Probably not. And so we're going to cash in him while we can, while we've got a big offer on the table now. What do you make of Brooklyn?
Brooklyn, I had in the 8th position. Their signings, Dennis Smith Jr. and Darius Blazey. So people, you're not really going to see them changing the entire roster. But I really like the growth from Mikal. Just as a person, I think, from what I can see as around the league, he's a really respected guy, really stand-up guy. And I got him in a leadership position. I think I'm really like for a youngish sort of team. I like their flexibility. Quite literally. So with the Claxton, Johnson, Bridges, Royce O'Neal, Dorian Finney-Smith, just in terms of switch-heavy type of guy. I think they can match up against most teams on there. I'm just not going to believe this Ben Simmons hype until I see it. Everything. I saw him on a podcast. I was on Paul George's podcast, and he said this guy, he's going to be so incredible. You guys are going to eat your words, sort of thing. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that.
I didn't even factor him in to where I placed. Is he going to play more than 30 games?
Until I see him. Thing about it. So, I mean, optimistically, you'd think a team like that with that youth and talent and the development, obviously, because look at the jump that Claxton made. So obviously their internal development is incredibly good, and on paper it does look like they could be a decent team. But I kind of like them that they can kind of go the other way, because if they want to make a huge haul with a trade, there's so many assets and so many tradable contracts on there as well. So if they get to the halfway season thing, I think you can almost, whether they put the marker as a halfway season, if they're doing well in the playoffs, keep running with this team and just back their internal development, or can go the other way on there. So Brooklyn I had eighth, but then under them, and curious where you have them too, because you've been a bit of a big fan of them, Orlando Magic. They only made one signing, which is Joe Ingles. Good on him for still getting his thing. But I think this is the sort of year where we really start seeing the talent translate into wins. His numbers, I think it was February or something here. I've never seen a shooting percentage that bad.
The 3%?
No, I've never seen a single.
He shot 3%.
Well, I think because he still shot a lot too, which was no confidence, I guess. But I mean, 6'10", do-it-all forward. It's so hard, and Franz is right behind him too. He's also another do-it-all guy. A guy that he moves so different to other guys that are 6'10". Wendell Carter Jr., I think, I've seen him just at the top of the three, playmaking from there. I think that big, huge lineup, so switchable, so many ways to play there. We just utilise all their strength. Their guard rotation, I think Markel Fultz's getting a little bit healthier, and they signed Anthony Black and Jet Howard, and all scouts seem to really, really like them. So I think the fact that they're building something, momentum, and to me, I'm a big fan of whoever their trainers are underneath them. They're obviously turning these guys into real weapons, because Franz is really impressing me, and Paolo can only go up from a rookie of the year. So Orlando, I think this is the year they start transitioning, really push to maybe even knock on the door of playoffs, but I think they can put a circle around the playing tournament. Where did you have Orlando, and what's your excitement level for Orlando?
Yeah, I had them ninth. I love this team. I really do. Paolo and Franz, to have that dynamic duo there, it's why I had Orlando above Indiana, is because you've obviously got Halliburton in at the Pacers. I just don't know who that second kind of all-star level guy is next to him. I'm not saying that Paolo and Franz will be all-star level players necessarily next season, but I just love the talent that those two provide as a pairing there at the forward spots. Wendell Carter Jr., I think, is a fantastic starting center. He's not a big name by any means, but I think he's been a fantastic addition for them, again, going back to the Vooch trade. I just want to see one of their guards really pop here, and I don't think it's going to be Cole Anthony. I don't think it's necessarily going to be Jalen Suggs, although you could see some improvement there. I think he's more of a two kind of thing, a bit of a 3-and-D guy, if he can get that three-point shot to a consistent level. I just think Markel Fultz, now I know he's actually a fair way into his career now. What's he going into? His 6th or 7th season?
Something like that. He's been around.
He's actually been around a while now, but he's had so many injuries, and he obviously had that weird shit in Philadelphia and whatever else earlier in his career. I just think he's actually gonna make a jump here. We saw some signs coming off that ACL, and if you were going to have, I might even check the odds again. We're going into a bit of betting stuff here, which is absolutely fine. If I was going to have a little bit of a long-term play at most improved player, I'm going to assume he's going to be quite decent odds.
He was the number one pick in 2017, so he's been around for injury-riddled years in there. But I mean, 2017 was some time ago. He saw how healthy he looked towards the end of last season, and he actually was shooting and getting to the cup. So I can see.
So he's paying $51 for most improved player. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to expect him to win it. I think that's just a little bit overs. You look at the other players who are at $51 odds. Denny Avdia, that's whatever. James Wiseman. Are you telling me that James Wiseman is the exact same as Markel Fultz in most improved?
Why
Like
is it?
that's ridiculous. Rui Hachimura, like that's just not going to happen. So I just think that he's over the odds a little bit. I think he should be close to like a Cameron Johnson is $36 for most improved. In my opinion, there's a much more chance that Markel Fultz is winning most improved than Cameron Johnson. Like, are you kidding me? I'm anyway. Like, this is a talented young team. Franz is 23 for most improved. I don't know where Banchero is. Banchero's at 34, so they've got some young talent here that you expect to make quite a jump here coming into their, well, for Banchero into his second season, for Franz into his third season, and even for Fultz, uh, having been around a while, I just think given the injuries and everything, if he can get some consistency and playing opportunity here, which I think he will be, I think he'll be their starting point guard. I can see them being a team that makes a little bit of a jump here towards playoff action. So I had the Magic ninth, it was the Nets 10th, Magic ninth, Bulls 8th. Does that mean we're up to 7th? I'm getting a little bit lost here. I've got Atlanta at 7th. Who did you have?
Also Atlanta.
Yeah, I thought that might have been the case.
And I mean, I guess finally John Collins got moved to. Feels like he's been in trade rumors since day dot. But I'm getting off him. I've always put him in the overrated category. I've never really seen the whatever.
You're a certified John Collins hater.
I am a certified guy. You can comfortable in the hater column. I think the highlights are just. I mean, he lives above the rim, so it's exciting. I just don't see translated wins. I'm also pretty confident. Like the forward rotation of Hunter, Sadiq Bey, Jalen Johnson, Kongwu, I reckon you could make up a lot of those minutes on there. Another year of Trey and Murray being together. Obviously, they extended Murray. Quinn Snyder, he's going to actually have a full off season and then preseason, and then to actually put an offense together on there. So they're two all-star level talent guards. So to me, that's probably where my confidence is. I do like a change of scenery with a coach too, with a young team. Obviously, we heard Trae Young's bumped heads with a few coaches, so maybe Quinn Snyder. And we know that he's a defensive profile he was able to build in Utah. So obviously, there's those wings that I just mentioned there. They fit the bill of switchable wings. I mean, their size and length on there. So if he can start putting them together, I've seen Clint Capella in trade rumors. So if they sounds like they're going to almost completely reset and build the team around Trey and Murray. So I don't know. Atlanta probably won't go any higher than this because that's a lot of change in a short amount of space. But you'd think just with those two guards alone, you could probably be comfortably putting them at the lower end of the playoffs. Did you see anything that you really liked, or you just, I don't know, just a bit of change is maybe good for them, and another year together is always good for a pair of talented players?
Yeah, no, I don't have too much to add to what you just said because I wholeheartedly agree with everything you've said. I think that when I was going through and doing my power rankings here, I think that the Quinn Snyder effect was the biggest factor for me. Just the fact that he now gets a full off season to kind of reset rather than coming in as he did, kind of on the run and trying to manage the team straight away like he did. You get Murray on a pretty decent extension. Can he get back to kind of all-star level to DeJounte Murray? That's the real question mark, because if you've got two all-stars in the backcourt, then you shouldn't really be any lower than 7th in your conferences straight away. I don't really care who else you've got on the team. Like, you shouldn't be 7th. The Capella thing to me is interesting. I think there's going to be an argument pretty quickly here that I just probably prefer a Kongwu as my starting center over Capella. And it's going to be interesting to see if he can get some value for him, maybe in, again, one of the forward spots. But, you've got DeAndre Hunter there. He's an interesting player for mine because they gave him a pretty decent deal last offseason. Not one that I don't think he's necessarily worth. However, he's clearly got some talent. The injury issues have been there. Can he be consistent? Who knows? We'll wait and see. Bogdanovic is a nice scorer. I'm assuming he's going to be coming off the bench again. They're a pretty deep team. I don't mind them at all. I still look. I'll keep coming back to this. You know how I like to say it. If the best player on your team is under 6'3" and his name's not Steph Curry, you're not winning an NBA championship. So they'll still have to make a move there probably at some point. is Trey a guarantee to be on the team past the February trade deadline? Probably, but there's been speculation around him, particularly going back to the end of last season. So yeah, we both got them 7th. I think they're honestly, they're a pretty safe 7th in my opinion. Like, I don't see them being any better than that because I like all the 6 teams above them, but I like them much more than the teams below them, just in terms of what I'm going to see next season. I think they're pretty safe around that the playing mix towards the bottom end of the playoffs. I had the Cleveland Cavaliers 6th. Any difference for you there? You got a bit of a smirk?
No, I think we're going to agree very comfortably moving forward here because I also have them 6th. Pretty safe 6th for you, or why do you have them no higher than 6th?
Well, that you can put, and it seems like we've been doing this almost for a while now, but you can put them in the you can put them and the Knicks in the same basket, I think, in terms of who are you going to, who do you prefer out of the two teams, basically. And it's funny because they've got this weird connection between, like with Donovan Mitchell, where Mitchell's now up for an extension. I don't think he's necessarily going to extend, and it's kind of ironic how the Cavs stole Mitchell kind of almost out of the Knicks basket last offseason when all that speculation about him leaving Utah potentially for the Knicks, the Cavs end up getting him. Although I still think there's a world in which he ends up on the Knicks. And it could be as early as, like, he's got 2 years left on his deal. Again, I just don't think the Cavs want to go into a situation where, like, next off season, where they have got 12 months to try and convince Donovan Mitchell, and if they can't, they either let him walk in free agency or they get not great return for him because he's got less than 12 months left on his contract. So I know a lot of other analysts have been suggesting this, but would you look at Donovan Mitchell trades now if you're the Cavs? And this is why the biggest reason I have them below the Knicks is because there's just some worries there, I think, in terms of if he'll stay at the Cavs long term, and if you have question marks on his ability to do that, then do you look now at deals rather than let his contract play out and either getting nothing or getting heavily reduced value because he's got less than 12 months left? That's my worry there with the Cavs. And also the double big lineup queries. Jared Allen, in terms of players under pressure going into next season,
Mate.
Jared Allen is up there. Not only because of the fact he sucked during the playoffs, but the fact that he just came out and blatantly said the lights were too bright for me.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what you want to hear from an NBA player, and it's the first round of the playoffs. For goodness sake, we ain't in the conference finals or the NBA finals. It's the first round of the playoffs. It's not really what you want to hear because it doesn't necessarily fulfill me with too much confidence that he's going to come back bigger and better next season. Like, that's a worry for me. And I'm just thinking, again, longer term, is this, Mobley Allen combination going to work for them moving forward? I know they've done a lot of moves to try and get that small forward spot solidified, I guess. They bring in Max Strus from Miami. I'm sure you'll be able to talk a little bit more about that. They bring in the minivan from Philadelphia. Like, he'll play obviously a lot of minutes at the 3. So yeah, the Mitchell worries and the Mobley Allen question marks for me is why I had them below the Knicks.
Cavs couldn't have more pressure on them coming to this season with a lot of moving parts, and I don't have much to add to what you just said there. The double big lineup, and I guess being AFL fans too, it's there's been a lot of topics about what the double ruck lineup actually does with the Melbourne Demons, and now you're looking at Max Gawn having gone back to All Australian form with.
Brody Grundy out of the team.
Being out. Yeah. And I think this season, and because they know that the time bomb is there with Donovan Mitchell, because the Knicks are salivating seeing that that's still an option for them. I think this season what they need to do is get rid of the double lineup and actually just put Jared Allen out there and Mobley and split their minutes up and essentially make them play for that 5-man spot, because this double big lineup, Mitchell Robinson thoroughly outplayed Jared Allen in a playoff series. And again, you and I both agree, if you don't have a Jokic or an Embiid, you just get a Mitchell Robinson serves a lot of purposes, and you can get them for pretty cheap anywhere. So Mobley's on his $100 million extension that he was on, and I think he will have to be the move that you make to shore up that wing position to not only be a better team, because you got horribly exposed by the Knicks. You had no versatility, you had no second gear, unless Donovan Mitchell and uh, come on a great run here. Their point
Darius Garland.
Darius Garland. I just said Darius Blazer. I don't know. That's not a point guard.
It's a lazy Sunday.
Yeah, one of those ones. I think you didn't have a second gear. The bigs didn't offer really that much versatility. And I think obviously Evan Mobley's the better player, and I think you have to make a move on there. But I'm also reading about these Donovan Mitchell rumors in the New York Knicks, and the fact that they're right there with you as a team, you're going to be on the hot seat. And I'm really worried about the fact that he just gave us Kevin Love, and Kevin Love was playing awesome basketball for them. I thought he'd be perfect for a team that's young and exciting on there. The fact that he just kind of gave him to us, and he played pretty well for us in the playoffs. It's little moves like that I'm kind of, whether it's just cracks that I'm seeing, or maybe I'm reading too much into the Cavs, but you want to be really, really, really strategic, and because I think the next three moves that you make may determine whether Donovan Mitchell stays or goes with your demands of trade. So yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. This season, the Cavs are on the hot seat after a great season last year. They're already, I guess, this is the pressure of success and rising to the top. These sort of conversations need to start happening.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, if you're Donovan Mitchell, what's actually the attraction of the Cavs over the Knicks at this point? Now, I think going back to last season, you can make the argument that the Cavs will and are going to be a better team moving forward. But with how Brunson played for the Knicks last season, I just don't see how. I'm not categorically saying that the Cleveland Cavaliers have a better future than the New York Knicks. I can't categorically say that. And if that's not the case, then I just wonder what else the Cavs have going for them for Mitchell to look around and say, yep, this is where I want to be long term. The Knicks, obviously, I'm assuming we both had at 5. They're still looking for that third star, I guess, if you want to call Randall a star and have him and Brunson. They've got the RJ Barrett contract, which we probably should just get it over and done with. Can we just get a package of Barrett and Filler and a couple of picks for Mitchell? Honestly, I just think we should fast forward that timeline to now. Do you agree? I feel like that's just going to be inevitable.
Yeah, RJ Barrett, he needs a change of scenery. He's had a tough few years in the New York market. I think he needs somewhere to go somewhere else.
Well, the fact is, Barrett's trade value continues to decline, and as I said before, the further that Mitchell goes closer to the end of his contract, his value will start to decline, and therefore, both declining value. Although Mitchell obviously less so, he's a star level player. But I just feel like that's marrying up perfectly for a Barrett and salary filler and picks for Donovan Mitchell. Have you got much on the Knicks? I'm assuming you had them 5th.
I did have them 5th, and yeah, just hats off to their performance last year. Jalen Brunson, incredible. I boohooed the contract, admittedly. I didn't see the value, but to embrace it and actually become a leader of that team, I think he's underrated. I think that contract actually looks like value now that with the season he had. DiVincenzo, I think he's going to have a 15-year NBA career. Everyone always talks highly of him. You, as a Warriors man, you obviously really appreciate it. I think he slots perfectly into everything they're building on there. Obviously got the connection to Brunson from their college days, so I'm excited for him. But I think this season, it's funny just how the Cavs and Knicks are so coincide. They overlap in so
many. They're tied together. Yeah,
going to be a watch, that's for sure, moving into the next season.
Yeah. 4, I had the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, could they move their way up to the top 2? Possibly, but this Harden situation, there's too many question marks around it to have them any higher than 4th for mine. Look, they're still a talented team. Didn't make a whole lot of off-season moves, and now they're just stuck with this Harden thing in terms of, is he going to come into training camp if he still is with the team and just be an absolute nuisance, be out of shape, be unfit, not perform anywhere near the James Harden, who is no longer an MVP level player, but is still an all-star level player in this league. they do have some financial flexibility moving forward to next season, but to next off season, obviously with Harris's money done, Harden as we spoke about, but this Joel Embiid timeline is ticking with Embiid being an MVP caliber player. The time is ticking, and I'm just wondering, can you just wait this season out and say, well, we're not actually, like, we're going to be a playoff team, but we're not going to be championship contenders in 2023-24. We'll just wait until next offseason where we're going to have some financial flexibility. Maybe we can make a big move then. I just thinking that's just too much of a risk. That's just too much of a risk because you've got Embiid and his health and just the wish for him to win an NBA championship, to go further than the second round of the playoffs, which they're yet to do. So I do have to question what they're doing this offseason and what the whole Harden scenario. Like, I know it's not necessarily all on the franchise. Like, this is a Harden issue as well, but you can't just spend another year of Embiid's prime with issues around, like we had Simmons a couple of years ago, with issues around the team. That's why I thought like last season was really their best opportunity, because it didn't feel like they had too many off-court issues, contractual issues with their players, and they could fully focus on basketball. And it didn't work out for them in the end. And that's just classic Philly, really, over this Embiid era, trust the process era of the franchise.
The Philadelphia 76ers, yeah, your guess is as good as mine this offseason. Harden, whether I'm pretty confident, I feel like he's going to go to LA, and the package that they're going to get back is going to be like a Norman Powell, Covington, like those sort of level players. And even though I'm expecting a huge leap for Tyrese Maxey, I should be pretty interested to see what he's paying for. Even making first All-Star team, or even pay most improved. There's still the versatility. Like, if you're like offensive force,
$12 most improved, by the way.
Oh, there you go. Well, if your offensive force is Tyrese Maxey and then Embiid, and the drop off next person like Norman Powell or something like that, nothing's really changed all that much. There's not one defender on this team that I truly trust. PJ Tucker is 35 plus, beg your pardon, and that's who you're going to throw at your Tatums and Giannis's when you come up against them in the playoffs. Nick Nurse is a change. I'm not too confident yet in such a short amount of space. Pat Bev signing, they haven't done anything, and I think they haven't been good at like managing like things outside. Like, they're not a first class organization. If there was a lot of drama happening with players and everything, I'd really trust, say, the Golden State Warriors or the Boston Celtics on that front. Philadelphia, to me, have had such a horrible decade, really, in terms of management. And off court there, and the fact that you've got rumors always swirling around Embiid's unhappiness and Harden always wanting to move, I think that's a reflection on the team there. So Embiid, obviously middle of his prime, he's the MVP of the league for a reason. They're going to be a top team with him healthy, but there's so many things that could go wrong, and there's nothing to me that like gives me confidence that they won't do anything more than what they just did this offseason, because when they come up against these top teams, I expect, let's say Harden stays, I expect him to fall apart. Embiid, I expect him to fall apart, and the lack of versatility and talent will really be on show. So I put him fourth just because it's Embiid and he's Embiid, but I expect a lot of things to go wrong because that's the Philly way this past decade.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got your Miami Heat third. I'm acting on the presumption they do get Damian Lillard, but even with Lillard, I still think they're below the top two. Couple of again, I'll ask you, what does the losses of Gabe Vincent and Max Strus mean for the Miami Heat? Is it something or is it nothing?
I expect us to just find someone else to turn into this.
The G League coming to play that role.
The street will pick up and he'll become a starting point guard. But I'm also acting on the fact that we get Damian Lillard. I'll let you continue, but hence the smile on my face.
No, I just think that like Dame is on the outer of his prime now on the deck. Like, he's still a very good player. Jimmy is Jimmy. He's going to be an excellent postseason performer. Not so much necessarily in the regular season. I just I still think there's. I know it's funny to say. It's funny to say that an NBA Finals team could get one of the best point guards of all time. Let's say in Damian Lillard, who is still somewhat near his prime, and yet I'm going to say that in my power rankings right now they are third, and I don't know what it is. It's just yeah, it's hard for me to make an argument as to why they can't be in the top two. As a franchise, they do hold a lot of trust in me. I just think that there were some things that went their way this postseason. Like Giannis doesn't get injured and Miami are out in the first round, and we're not having this conversation about them potentially being a top two team in the conference. I'm sorry. You can have a crack back at me. You can make your argument. I'm just Giannis doesn't get injured. It's a completely different world. Let's be honest. And so they are third for me just because I think there's the Bucks and Celtics are more talented, even if the Heat get Lillard. Now, if there is a world in which they can get Lillard and keep Tyler Hero, then maybe I'm having a different. But that's not a world that exists for mine. The Hero's got to be involved here.
Yeah, I want to be perfectly. I was just as shocked as any NBA fan to see the Miami Heat go on their run, and so when we lost to the Bulls originally, I thought, "Oh my god, what the?" And then, here we were in the NBA finals, but I think we're improving. We've done it. Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and role players has gotten us to 3 conference finals and 2 NBA finals in the space of a few years. So it's a proven commodity. If we're going to add Damian Lillard to this mix, and obviously just be role players that are left over. I mean, Thomas Bryant was the closest thing to a signing that we got in that season. I fully back us, and the reason I don't have us any higher than third too is because until I see a Lillard in a jersey, a Miami Heat jersey, I'm not going to go there. But I think we have built such a culture. No one, I was not surprised that he wants to come to Miami. I think what we've built over there, and I'm really, really excited for Lillard, even though he, again, I got the number 3 pick in the draft. So even though he had a career year there, and obviously he's a little bit older, if you want to call it that, but his shooting alone is probably why I expect him to age gracefully. Obviously, Curry's the golden standard, and I can see what his jump shooting can do, but I don't expect him to break down like other point guards in the future because he had a career year across some numbers on there, and I think it's the fact that he's perimeter orientated. Bam, I'm so almost proud of to be able to stand up in the playoffs and actually play both ways and go up against Jokic. And there's no man fear quite like a healthy Butler in the playoffs, especially if we come against the Celtics. So Miami Heat third for mine, and expect anything and everything from my Miami Heat this offseason.
Yeah. All right. Bucks and Celtics, how did you rank them?
I went Celtics second there because they obviously their roster. I feel like they change out their roster a lot in there, but they signed the Brown extension finally got announced. Biggest contract in NBA history for Jaylen Brown. I'm sure we could do a whole podcast on that there. But Paul Zingis, he, to me, in terms of his team and a fit, I think with his spacing, Robert Williams in inconsistency, and then Al Horford's age, I think he's perfect for them. He had an incredible, underrated the season, I think. His 3-point percentage was back up to 38%, and I think for the Celtics, who Jaylen Brown's more of a slasher and had him get to the cup pretty comfortably. Derek White got announced as their starting point guard, so they're going to have a big team across the board. And defenses, I mean, he's going to stretch them out massively, all those players, because they can all shoot. Obviously, the Marcus Smart loss hurts. It sounds like he's incredibly well loved around the Boston community on there. But that lineup, I don't see why that team that can't win a championship on there. And they're first class organisation, as I always like to say. I just don't want them. If they run up against I just don't trust them to run up against my Miami Heat. Is my final little dig there. Did you have them as your number one, or did you go the other second as well?
No, I had them 2 as well. There is a question mark, I think, with the Porzingis fit. Now, I think Porzingis is a better player than Marcus Smart, although Smart did win Defensive Player of the Year in 2022. The Porzingis, Horford, Robert Williams trio, for me, that's a lot of pressure on 2 players that are incredibly injury prone and a guy who is really old. And what kind of kind of front court depth, center depth do they have beyond them? I'm also interested to see how they kind of when the three of them are fully healthy, how they kind of manipulate the minutes. Like how much are we going to see Porzingis and Williams on the floor together? How much are we going to see Horford playing next to those guys, or do they go a little bit smaller, play Brogdon, White, Tatum, Brown, and then one of Porzingis, Horford, or Williams? Like it just there's some question marks around this team that I think are greater than Milwaukee. Because if I go to the Bucks, they've just brought everyone back. Like it's continuity. And yes, they lost in the first round of the playoffs last year, but I think they go to the NBA Finals if Giannis doesn't get injured, and it's maybe one of the biggest what ifs in recent NBA history, because I think a Bucks Nuggets NBA Finals would have been absolutely enthralling. Could have gone either way. I fully expect it would have gone at least 6, if not 7 games. It's in fact, looking back, it's one of the most disappointing aspects in recent times for me. The fact that I know he only missed, what was it, like a game and a half or something? Like, did he miss 2 full games, or was it a game and a half?
I think he got injured in one, and then
Yeah, he got injured in one and then missed another. And it's just really disappointing, I think, because that could have been the makings of a great NBA Finals if the Bucks had gone all the way out of the East and met the Nuggets in the NBA Finals. No disrespect to your Miami Heat, but the Finals was a pretty one-sided contest, really. Which, again, no disrespect to the Heat. They came from the freaking 8th seed. Like, what the hell? But yeah, I just think Milwaukee. There's the one question mark I have with Milwaukee is just Middleton. So they're bringing back on this massive deal, and his injury concerns and how he kind of performed last season. Can he get back to his very best, like 2021 Middleton in their championship run? That's just the real question mark for me, because he is their closer. Really, like he's the guy that can hit mid-range jumpers and have the ball in his hands in the last minutes of games, which is a little bit of a plight, maybe against Giannis, who I consider still a top 2 player in the world, but that's who Chris Middleton can be at his very best, and that's the one question mark for me is whether he can get back to that.
Well, yeah, they did bring everyone back, and I saw a lot of concerns about their age. Like Brook Lopez, obviously getting older, but I think there's a reason why he was in. Some contracts were thrown around him to go to Houston, possibly for like 100 million, because he had one of his best 3-and-D seasons. I mean, I think he shot close to 38% on like 5 attempts, and obviously Giannis in the middle of his prime,
close to winning Depoy.
Close to winning Depoy on there, and they've brought everyone back. So I think that says something. Life after Coach Bud, I think, is going to be a watch. They got Adrian Griffin back. I just had to look up his name truthfully, but it's Raptors assistant coach. I remember seeing that he's going to be emphasizing more ball movement and more flow, because their offense is very stagnant and predictable come playoffs. Because I guess he got exposed the best coach in the NBA, so he can expose most offenses, but very predictable. So going to be a watch to see what he brings and that side to it. They signed Malik Beasley. I don't understand why he can't be more consistent. A guy like him, who with his shooting, I feel like he should be a starting level guard with his tools and shooting. But yeah, I don't know, must be something else on there. So I'm confident in them being right up the top. They'll obviously be close to the top of the East like they do most years, and then we'll see just how much of a team they've developed and learned from last season. But the Eastern Conference, probably similar to years gone by in terms of power rankings. I can't see any dramatic changes. A lot of teams more grouped together because these power rankings, I could have grouped them all into like 4 different groups in terms of contenders and teams. But it's good to see that we're kind of both on the same wavelength. And yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with those kind of groupings. Like I'm just going through my list again now. Like I think you could break it down into subgroups.
Yeah.
Almost like there's a top 2 for me. Then Miami are kind of with the Lillard question marks are kind of on their own. 76ers with the Harden question marks are kind of on their own, or you could group 76ers Miami together. The Cavs and the Knicks are very much grouped together.
Thing.
You've got the Hawks, who I think are actually by themselves because I think they're better than everyone else, but clearly not better than any of the top 6 teams. And then everyone from the Bulls, the Magic, the Nets, the Pacers, the Hornets, and maybe even the Raptors. You could almost just throw a blanket over 6 of those teams. And then it's like the Wizards and the Pistons at the bottom. Like that's the way I see it, and I feel like you're fairly similar. We had our top 7 the same, and then kind of the teams 8 through 15 were we. I think we feel similarish about. They were just ranked maybe slightly differently.
Well, you know how every team, every year, there's always a team that just like the Knicks had their fourth seed season, and then last year, probably the Cavs. I saw them at the top of the East. So, do you, at this stage, can you point to a team where that's going to be that team? Can you, if you hazard a guess?
In that kind of 8 to 15 range. Like I could see Atlanta. Like I've got Atlanta 7th. If the Harden thing is like stupidly weird in
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia, could the Hawks be better than the Cavs, the Knicks, and the 76ers? Like I don't think so. But if I'm to say one team that's going to randomly pop up to a top 4 seed, it's probably Atlanta. But even then, it's not a huge jump from 7, is it? I'm looking at the other teams like. I love the Magic. I just don't think they're
Yeah,
quite ready to go anything higher than like 8th or ninth. Yeah, I just don't see it out of any of these teams. I think Charlotte are a lock for the over again. But I don't see they're not going more than 35 wins. So I think it's not to bore people, but I think it's going to be a pretty standard regular season in the Eastern Conference. And in fact, we'll get in. So we're going to do our West in a couple of weeks. I do think the West is probably going to be a little bit more interesting than the East, because I think in the West you've got Denver, and then I think there's a plethora of teams who are going to try and make their mark for probably second in the conference and really push Denver. But we'll get into that in a couple of weeks. Anyway, mate, anything else to add? Much on for the rest of your Sunday?
Not very lazy Sunday. I reckon I'll catch the back end of the Saints Blues game. But no, that's everything for me. Look forward to chat West Conference next week.
Yep, absolutely looking forward to it. Thanks for listening to the episode, guys, and we'll see you next time.